Let's not meet. I told a serial killer to FK off. In 2006, I was a college student at ASU. I lived in an off-campus apartment on the ground floor, and it was a block off a major street here in Phoenix called Baseline. These details are important. In the summer of 2006, Phoenix, Arizona was plagued by two serial killers. One was the Phoenix shooter who ended up being a team of two guys randomly shooting people, and the other was the Baseline killer, a rapist and murderer. Having two serial killers put the entire city on edge, and everyone was talking about it. I even saw articles in Time or Newsweek about the situation. So, the fall 2006 semester had just started. Now, you may have heard this, but Phoenix is hot in August. It would get stuffy in my apartment, and so I'd leave the window cracked a little because the morning air is nice. The blinds provided visual cover. Anyways, one morning, a strange sound woke me up. It was the crack of dawn, 4:45 am, and the sun was just barely coming up. It was the sound of someone lightly tapping on the window, and it seemed intentional. In my tired state, I figured it could be a bird or some branches or something trivial. Tap tap tap. Silence. After about 90 seconds of nothing, the tapping returned, and it was absolutely purposeful. I was positive it was a human producing this noise. I thought it was my boyfriend, who thought it was cute to try and scare me sometimes. I decided I'd be a bit of a brat and make him wait, but I was also getting really angry. How dare he pull a prank when I'm trying to sleep? This is just like him. I'm going to give him a piece of my mind about disturbing my sleep like this. Tap tap tap. At a certain point, I got up to get a glass of water, still being in the mindset of wanting to annoy my stupid boyfriend who thought this would be funny. But I saw some movement through the slit in the blinds, and I marched over and yanked the blinds so I could see. Definitely not my boyfriend, I said very loudly. What the duck? He sort of seemed taken back by my anger, but only slightly. The man I saw will be with me forever, or more specifically, his eyes and the feeling they gave me were insanely creepy. Honestly, words can't do justice to how terrifying his eyes were. They looked like black orbs with no white in them. Absolutely predatory. When I see pictures of Ted Bundy or Charles Manson, that's exactly what he looked like. Even if you saw a picture of how they looked, it's different when you experience it in person. It totally floored me. Something about this man was profoundly wrong. He was crouched down, like an umpire. He had on dark pants, a dark purple shirt, and a dark Nike hat. He had dark skin. I thought he was Hispanic, but later I found out he was a light-skinned black guy. You'll find out how I learned his name later. Anyways, after I yelled what the duck at him, he whispers to me, "Can I talk to you?" If you want to know how insanely creepy that is to hear, just whisper that sentence out loud to yourself right now. It still sends chills down my spine when I think of how that sounded. His hand subtly moved towards his waist. I later learned he would blitz attack his victims and he probably had a gun. All that separated us was a mesh screen. Now, this is about a 3-second interaction at this point. For some reason, I thought of Ted Bundy and how he'd pretend to be crippled to target his victims. I thought of my mom telling me to not be nice to strangers, don't be afraid to be a beach. My thinking wasn't as calculated as all that, but it was more the nano processing of how to deal with the situation. So, when he whispered that, I started yelling at him. Hell no. Get the duck out of here, douchebag. I shut the window angrily and locked it. I can't overemphasize how incredibly irritated I was that this person had the audacity to disturb my precious sleep. I laid back down and wondered if I'd been too mean. What if he needed help? But that didn't really make sense. Why would he be, like, tapping and whispering if he was truly in trouble? I decided he was a creep after all. I was too annoyed to go back to sleep, but I sort of laid back down. I told my roommate about an hour later and she sort of jokingly asked if it could have been the Baseline killer. When she said that, my heart sank. His face looked exactly like it did in the police sketches that were on billboards everywhere. The only problem is that those billboards showed him with dreads, and the man at my window had no dreads. Apparently, he was some sort of disguise artist who'd wear wigs. Updating the police sketch would have been a nice move, but they didn't. I called the Phoenix police, and the detective I talked to agreed that it sounded like his MO. The suspect would say something to throw off his target, and then he'd blitz attack. The detective said that my angry response probably made me seem like too much of a hassle and moved on. The only problem was that I thought the guy looked Hispanic, and the detective said many witnesses described him as black. I thought they might want to come out and try for samples or surveillance video or something, but I didn't hear back from the detective. My parents freaked out, then got us knives, pepper spray, and put up signs. Edit. Some PPL asked why I didn't get a gun. I can't remember why I didn't at the time, but I remember it being something I was open to when my dad brought it up. We learned another tenant had complained that same morning. I never learned the details, but this idiot was apparently going around the damn complex trying to find a target. The stupid apartment wouldn't let us out of our lease, so we moved to a second floor apartment right above our old unit. Side note, the neighbors who moved into our old unit were horrible, obnoxious tweakers who would do meth and play pitbull on repeat for hours and have knife fights at 11 AM on weekdays. There were times I wondered if they might be worse than the actual serial killer who came to my window. So, that unit was cursed somehow. Anyways, on the 4th of September, 2006, they arrested Mark Gudo. I think the detective didn't call me back because they were days away from arresting Gudo. When I saw his mugshot, I was sick but also relieved. He was absolutely the guy outside my window. To me, he looked like he could be Hispanic. You can judge for yourself if you Google it. He's on death row in Arizona now. His wife tried to mount some campaign to show that the police were framing him or something. On a personal level, it certainly would make for an interesting coincidence if this poor innocent man who they framed was also whispering like a creep and tapping my window. The other cool thing about this story is that I had a really bad eating disorder at the time, and about 8 months after this happened I got in solid recovery. I never would have experienced how wonderful life could be if the slightest thing would have changed that morning in 2006. I can't think of something more scary than a serial killer tapping on your window. That actually happened to me, and if it happens to you, just scare them right back. Don't be afraid to be downright rude to someone who's injecting themselves into your space. It could save your life if you're not afraid to throw your weight around and tell someone off. Trust yourself. You can still be a kind and generous person and still tell someone to duck off. Arizona Republic article. Summer of Fear. Phoenix New Times. Baseline color. All edits I make are minor grammar/sentence flow corrections. I also added some quality articles for anyone who wants to learn more. I love how you just laid back down after that happened. Huh, it makes me sound way more badass than I actually am. I thought he was a maintenance worker with a crush or something, even though that still would have been super creepy to do to someone. I definitely didn't realize what had happened until I talked with my roommate. Yeesh. Imagining some dude crouched outside your window whispering, "Can we talk?" is insanely creepy, and he turned out to be a killer. You're lucky you came away from it. Thank God. Thanks man. The enormity of the whole thing didn't hit me until about a week later. I was sitting in my room and I was just breathing, and I had such gratitude but also sadness that things could have gone so differently. I could be rotting in a dumpster, but I was breathing. It makes you think about life in a much more delicate way. I have no shame in being a little weary of creepy people if anyone gives me shit about being dramatic. It saved my life to trust myself, so whatever. A lease would absolutely not keep me in that building after an experience like that. I actually love that you felt guilty for possibly being too rude at first. Says a lot about how large a disparity there is between you and he, in terms of humanity. I made the mistake of googling his face. That guy has some ducked up eyes. He looks crazed. I imagined him outside a window asking if he could talk and I just feel sick. I can't believe you just shouted at him. Holy duck. I've also had contact with a serial killer, though under much different circumstances. I was walking through a parking lot with my GF in the late evening when a man approached me and asked me if I wanted to buy a computer monitor. Normally I'd just walk on by with a polite no, but it just so happened that my computer monitor had stopped working the night before, so I entertained his sales pitch. I'm a pretty huge guy and I don't really have the fear/vulnerability reflex that other people might have. He said he had it in his trunk and I started walking with him to his car. My GF however, was sketched out and tugged on my arm telling me we had to go. I wasn't terribly invested and I didn't feel like haggling the guy down for a monitor that might not even work. So I told the man I had to go and good luck selling the monitor. It was only later that I found out that this was John Allen Muhammad, the DC sniper. It was the night before he started his shooting spree. TL. Doctor, I almost funded terrorism. Holy shit, that's insane. Bro, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content. It's free and that's a great price.